everyone. Here we go. Welcome back to another Techno Saturdays. I'm John Selway. Really nice show we've got planned for you today. I'm really happy. So hopefully you all will enjoy what we've prepared for you. Of course, this stream is brought to you by 343 Labs. We do 343 TV 4 times a week now. And, sharing what we do as a music production school located in Berlin and in New York. We've got in-person classes happening again in New York, which is great news. And of course, we have our online program, so we, that we can offer to you no matter where you are in the world. And, we started doing this right at the beginning of the pandemic when everybody's locked down as a way of reaching out and building our community and sharing what we do with you. We were growing our Discord server. Check that out in the description below. There's links for that and for more information about the classes that we do. I do Ableton Live production and synthesis and sound design courses with 343 Labs. So yeah, and Techno Saturdays is my day to come out and get online and talk to you guys. We've got a lot of regulars here in the chat that I see. And also, as you know, I've been bringing on more and more guests all the time. It's been this is a highlight of my week for sure. Every week having someone new come on and talk about their music and show us a little something about how they work. And today's no exception with our guest today, Carl Finlow. Let's just acknowledge the chat a little bit, see who was in here. Chris White was the first one in the chat, I think more than an hour ago. And let's try out this new little toy I have to play with here. I've got a new way to bring up individual comments on the screen from the YouTube chat. So yeah, he's talking about Convergence is one of my fave albums. Looking forward to this. Glad we are here for you. And yeah, Convergence is a really great album from Carl. Cool. So John H. Kingston III is here from Rockaway Park as usual. Pavel K2, what's up? CokeTube says, hello, is there any video of Carl performing on a circuit or using it? Actually, yes, you got it. That is in the plan for today. We've got exactly that. Hey, William Mind Readers from France. Serotonin Records, BPMF, my partner for a long time. One of my Electro partners is here. Andrew Duke, another old friend. Martin Crockett, hello. Daniel Seidel, hello from Germany. And Max Wild, our fearless leader here at 343 Labs. What's up? So, as usual, we have a giveaway each week. This week, we've got an Ableton Live certificate for $200 to use for whatever you want from Ableton. Might be good if you're ready to, if you haven't upgraded to Live 11 yet, that would be a good use for it, or you could use it for some of their great packs and Max for Live devices and things like that. So if you haven't already entered, there's going to be a link here in the chat and to sign up for that. And we'll announce the winner in the chat, and I will also congratulate them on air before the end of the show. So without further ado, I'm very honored to introduce our guest today, Carl Finlow. What's up, Carl?
Hey, John, how you doing? Thanks for having me on the show.
It's my pleasure. I mean, we've been planning this for a little while. I've been looking forward to it. You've been great, like all the details of getting ready and making sure the technical side is taken care of. We've had a proper good time sort of nerding out on this, and I've really enjoyed the lead up to the show. So very glad to have you.
Me too. It's my first time doing anything like this, so getting the video and all of this working properly has been very interesting. It's good to see how it's done.
Yeah, it's good. And I have to say, like, I have a whole new skill set through the pandemic, learning how to be a live streamer and learning about broadcast and everything. So it's become not on the level of making music, but it's pretty close. It's kind of like getting ready for a live set in a way. Like, you do your prep and then you go on and you're walking on a tightrope for an hour.
Well, let's hope it won't break. I've got a good stable connection here, so absolutely, we should be good.
No, it's been great the whole time, and looks good, sounds good, and you've got your whole thing set up. Just to sort of talk a little bit ahead about what we're going to do today, starting out, just hanging out, talking about music, what you're doing lately. We've got some tracks that are upcoming to put on, and we can have a listen to and discuss a little bit. And then, as advertised in the title, you can see we're going to be looking at the circuit from Novation, which is a really great instrument for how inexpensive it is and how powerful it is. And, in the right hands, it can really do some damage. So we're going to take a look at how you're using that. And also, fairly recently, you switched from Ableton Live to Bitwig as your DAW of choice. And so, we'll see what you're doing there and talk a little bit about, the whats and the whys of moving to Bitwig and what you really enjoy about it.
Sure. Yeah,
so
let's do that.
that's what we're going to do today. And of course, you guys in the chat, any questions you have for Carl or for me or about, music production and electro and things like that, go ahead and throw them in there. I'll do my best to follow along and relay your questions here to Carl. Right. So anyway, let's listen to a little bit of music. I have got a couple of things set up here. This is a track called Revelations, something upcoming for you.
Yeah, it's on CPU. It's a new EP that's out now. Myself, I've supplied a track, and Fleck ESC, he's also supplied a track, and we've each remixed each other.
Nice.
So it's a kind of not a duet, but we've each contributed 50% of the EP.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
This is out now, actually.
Oh, okay. I thought this was coming up. So this is already available.
I think so, yeah.
If you guys don't already know, CPU Records is one of the most important labels in electro for sure. I mean, and not just electro as well. They kind of branch out in some other styles, but he's really got it together. That guy.
He really has. I think this is my third or fourth. I think it's my fourth release on CPU, and I'm aiming towards doing an album later in the year. So that's currently one of the projects I'm working on.
Nice. I'm just having a listen right now, and we were talking a little bit earlier about sort of the variety of styles of electro, and I was saying how my favorite stuff from you, it's either much more musical, like you're kind of reaching out with melody and harmony, and then balancing that somehow with like this futuristic electro vibe and really great beats. And then on the other side of it, I mean, we'll get into these as well, but like the more sparse, stripped down, darker, or more dance floor oriented stuff, like that's definitely my favorite stuff from you. So this was a really nice one to start out with as an example of that.
Yeah, it's nice and melodic, a lot of space in it, a lot of harmonies and melodies. It's very relaxing, this type of music to me.
Exactly.
To make and also to listen to,
Well, it's pleasantly harmonious in terms of the chords and the melody, but then there's the driving bass underneath it.
Sure.
What did you use for this track in terms of hardware and software? I'm wondering if this is more recent, or is it before you switched over to Bitwig, or was it earlier?
This is before Bitwig. This would all have been done in Ableton Live. So there'll be pieces of everything in there. There'll be some of the external audio gear, maybe the MS-101, the Behringer RD8. I mean, I've been buying bits of Behringer gear over the last few years.
Oh yeah.
So they are starting to make an appearance in my music. So it's a hybrid system, really. It's I'd gone from, in the 90s, having a full-blown analog recording situation, moving into the whole digital side of things, getting rid of all the hardware. And then for maybe all the time I was in Paris, so maybe 15 years, all of that was completely digital, just one Mac, totally in the box. But now I'm here down in the south of France. I have a dedicated room to do my music, so I've got space to start adding equipment again. So I'm moving into a kind of hybrid situation.
Oh, that's great. I kind of like the same.
A lot in the box, but I'm adding hardware to it at the same time.
Well, right, and that's one of the things we're looking at today is how you incorporate that hardware into your DAW workflow.
Sure. And it's one of the reasons why I switched over onto Bitwig. But yeah, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of questions or comments in the chat here. Someone wants to hear about compressing kick drums, and that always comes up. I think that must be one of the most popular subjects in terms of tutorials and production videos and things like that on YouTube is, getting your kick drum sounding right. So, that's something we could look at later on, but always it's a perennial question. Everybody's starting out trying to make their kick drums sound good.
It will be a short answer from me because I very, very rarely do it.
I think that's really important. I remember that one. We're gonna come back to that one. But yeah, that was a question or a comment from Subsex. And yes, Diego Soto asked if this will be posted later to watch. All of our videos are archived here on YouTube to see again in the future. You can come back and refer to it. And let's see what else is going on here. We've got the link for That is not the contest. There it is. Right, we got the link for the 200 Ableton voucher. Click on that if you haven't already. And I think we're good. Let's move on to another track, actually.
Oh.
I feel like we're amping up the energy level a little bit with this one.
Yeah. So this is the Behringer RD8 providing the drums.
Right, that was the other question. Cat Music is asking if we tried the Behringer RD8. Is it a good 808 clone? I think this should answer your question. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm having a great time with it. Again, it's what you do with it. It's how you mess about with it. It's how you use it, how you EQ it. But overall sound, I'm super happy with it.
I would agree. I've played around with it a little bit. Honestly, I haven't finished any tracks with it, but I have jammed and sort of made some loops and got started with some sketches.
I think it's a great package. Just all the individual outs.
I always wanted an 808, a real 808. I never managed to, do it. By the time I thought about they're just so expensive. I couldn't see putting all that money into it when I can have so many other less expensive and good sounding options with plugins and samples and synthesizing my own drum sounds, which is something I like to do. But the RD8 for the price is perfect. I mean, there are some issues with how Behringer operates as a business that people may have, but you cannot deny making these amazing instruments accessible to more people is really a big deal.
It really is. Yeah.
And as far as
I'm having a great time with the RD8. The sequencer, they keep adding new features to it.
Right. I need to do the update for the firmware, I think. There's something you mentioned that was a really cool thing that I haven't had access to yet. On. Great. And just going back to sound, the sound quality of this drum machine is great. If you want as close as you can get to the original sound, but in a more stable, modern format, it's pretty, there are other boutique options out there, and I don't mean Roland boutique, I just mean small makers doing expensive hardware in small runs that sound amazing. I think there's a French producer who makes a standalone 808 sound module that's purely analog, no sequencer built in.
Right.
The name of it escapes me, but I think I want to say it costs $1,000, but it sounds beautiful. The quality of the hardware used to build the thing is at a higher level than the cheaper components that Behringer is using to be able to produce it at such a low cost. But it's $1,000 or something like that, and there's a waiting list. Whereas you can just go out right now and get this, and it sounds very good for what they're doing. And then just talking a little bit about let's go to the compression and the kick thing. You said you don't do much of that.
Yeah.
So,
in general, on this track, there is some on there that's just using the built-in compressor in the RD8 itself. Which is quite snappy and punchy. But in general, I just love the sound of the 808 in general, and I rarely do too much to it. I love the rawness of the sound. It is pure electro to me, so I kind of don't touch the 808 a great deal. I just like to play with it raw.
What you just said about how it is pure electro, I agree. So much of this music was developed around drum machines, mainly the 808. And if you make a beat with an 808 as is, assuming you got your rhythms right, it is electro. You don't have to try very hard to make it sound otherwise. And
you're there already. That's the basis for what's to come after,
And I would say, I think the most pure expression of electro in terms of sound is the trigger output of the 808, the original trigger output. That little pulse is amazing. And that's the only thing I would say I don't like about the sound of the RD8 is that the triggers are not the same. If you tried listening to them, to do that Egyptian lover, if you know that Egyptian lover trick where you run the trigger into your mixer and put delay on it.
No, I've never.
That's a classic thing.
Seen that.
I did it in one of my videos earlier. Just then, someone in the chat was laughing because "Oh, it's just a click." Well, yeah, but if you do it right, it's the most pure electro thing you've ever heard. But you should try that sometime.
I use them traditionally. I just use, I plug it into the back of the MS-101 and trigger the sequences that way sometimes. It's nice doing that, very old school.
Very nice. A couple of nice comments here. William Mindreaders referring to the 808 clone I was talking about, not the Yocto. That's another good one, but that's not what I was thinking. I'm gonna have to look that up while we're on.
Yeah.
And AJ says Radioactive Man's remix of Hashtag is probably one of the best electro tracks ever. So you guys go back.
Nice.
You've done a lot of work with him.
Yeah, we go back to somewhere in the 90s. Keith and Andrew Weatherall used to come up to Leeds where we were living, and we go down to London and we do parties together, and yeah, we go back a long way.
Nice.
Got a lot of history.
I was also really pleased to have him on. Like I'm checking off the list of like my favorite electro producers and trying to get them on the show to talk about what we're talking about.
Keith's a real electro warrior. Well,
Absolutely.
A warrior in general. I mean, he's a great guy.
Such a good guy. I really enjoyed like having conversations with him and getting to know him leading up to the show.
Yep.
So now my friend Jason Shostak here, BPMF, the guy I do Serotonin Records with, says that Carl's music reminds me of Thomas Dolby a little bit. Would you say that's an influence
nice.
for you?
Massive influence. Dolby was huge in my life.
I think we can hear it a little bit.
As a teenager. His production was just exceptional, and the spacing he had between instruments and the clarity of his sounds was really, really inspirational to me. So that's a real compliment. If somebody can hear that in my music, then I'm happy about that.
Nice, Jason. You did good.
Thanks,
but
Jason.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know Jason's also a big fan, and as I am of that music, and it's very influential. And I think you can hear a little bit in how you construct your melodies, that kind of era, especially. But
yeah. I'm a kid from the 80s,
Sure.
That was my, that's where it all happened for me. Depeche Mode, Thomas Dolby,
right.
All those amazing British electronic pop bands that were around at the time. Cabaret Voltaire, Soft Cell, I mean, the list goes on and on. Human League. It was an incredible time, that in the 80s in the UK.
Definitely so much influential music from back then. I mean, just thinking of early Human League, like the sounds they were using, that is also
Gary
just
Newman.
electro.
Amazing time. So that filled my head as a youth, and I was fortunate enough to have synthesizers from an early age. I had my first Moog synthesizer in 1983, so it was at the time when all that was exploding. So I was in my bedroom fiddling about with synthesizers from way back then, really.
Another track now. This is a little bit of a darker, heavier jam, Proton Mass. I think you mentioned this is from an album you did for 2020 Vision.
It was an album I released on my own on Bandcamp last year.
Okay, and then they're re-releasing some of it.
It was only digital on Bandcamp, and they've taken a whole bunch of tracks and they're releasing those tracks onto vinyl for the first time.
That's great.
This is one of them.
Yeah, this is definitely, I mean, you sent me quite a few tracks from upcoming releases or current releases. Thank you very much. And this is definitely like a DJ set track. This is, assuming I ever do any more DJ gigs, this is going right into the folder, I have to be honest. I'm not playing vinyl nowadays so much, but this is definitely going to get played. It's just my kind of dark dance floor, late night electro jam. It's moody, but it still has good energy.
Sure. This is the type of thing I would play in my live set.
Sure.
So this I'd be dropping this at like 3 a.m. That type of environment, really. So this was written during the start of confinement and the pandemic, and I had a real hard time writing any music at the beginning of it all. It just seemed so stressful, and everybody was having such a bad time. All sorts of death and everything all over the place. I just couldn't write. So I had maybe a month of really struggling to get anything done. But then
I understand. It totally makes sense.
It just didn't seem right. It seemed frivolous, almost like just writing music when there was just so much torment and stress going on, But I came out of that, and this album was the first thing to come out of that period, really. The album was called Crushed. This was one of the tracks on there. I think there's maybe 12 or 14 tracks on the album on Bandcamp.
12 or 14, that reminds me, you're one of the most prolific producers I know. I have to say, I mean, if to look at your discography and the number of releases and tracks you've done and the consistent quality of that, and there's very few that, you know, I wrote in one of my social media posts, incomparable. There are very few producers that maintain your level of consistency and quality across so many different releases.
Thanks, Sean. It's a nice thing to say. It's all I do. It's all I've ever done. From the early 90s till today, this is all I do. I just make music. That's all I want to do. It's what I'm good at.
I think that says something like the time you're spending. You know, I mean, obviously you've got talent and you've got knowledge, but having the time to apply it and do it consistently, I mean, obviously, it's obvious to me you've got a great work ethic and you just keep at it no matter what.
Yeah, I'm possessed by it. If I can't do it, I'm in a really bad mental place. I have to keep moving forward with it. Like a shark, if I stop moving forward, I'll die.
Got it. Well, yeah, even though you felt like you weren't feeling creative early on in the pandemic start, like, you got out of it, you broke through it, and probably used your feelings to, like, in the music. Like, if you listen to a track like this, it's simple, there's only a few elements, and it's still, there's emotion in it. And that's another thing. I think that you've done a pretty good job of, like, conveying feeling in very pure electronic sound.
That's important to me. It's not just about the boom, boom, boom and the sort of dance floor vibe. I mean, I do that as well, you know, but there's a time and a place for it, and there's other times and other places where you need to be more introspective, and that's when I try to reach down and touch sort of deeper emotions, really, with things like this.
I've just popped up another nice question here from the chat. It's a new thing, this little code I have now to break the questions out of the YouTube chat. I keep forgetting to do it. But Dave Robson asks, he'd love to hear a little about how you layer synths in your tracks. For example, Equilibrium has loads of layers of synths, but we can hear the character of each one, and they sound so damn alive. So, you know, that's kind of, there's a couple of different things in that question, I would think.
Again, it goes back to learning things from Thomas Dolby and the delicate way and the skill he had at layering things. I guess it comes from that, really. I mean, there was other producers that were influencing me, but Dolby really had a huge effect on me in that sense. So yeah, there's a lot of subtle layering, but I try to get sounds very, very precisely in their own sonic area within the mix, so they're not clashing with each other.
So I would say for me, it's like if I was handling this question in a class, I would talk about first the instruments themselves and how different instruments in different frequency ranges fit together. And you can even talk about, you know, even though it's not strictly electronic, you can talk about orchestration, like how the violins and the violas and the woodwinds are all in different frequency ranges and how they all spread through and all the different kind of ranges of, like, bass versus leads, that kind of thing. That's how you need to know where your instruments fit when you're writing. And then on the second side of it, it would be mixing and EQ and balancing levels. And so it's both, right?
The orchestral side, it's funny you mentioned the orchestral side of things, because prior to all the things in the 80s, I grew up listening to Issei Automata. That was a massive influence on me as a very small child. From 7 years old onwards, I was listening to Tomita albums. So my head was being filled with orchestration, but in an electronic form. So that carried me and my interest into the 80s, which went head on into the electronic pop explosion. So that's where I'm coming from, really.
No, that's good. And I would say, you know, for people who are also kind of trying to learn how to do this and to approach the level that you're at, it might be wise to go back and listen to some of this stuff as a, you know, learning exercise, and just kind of listen carefully to how instruments are brought together And, you know, especially like combining, if you're making electronic music and you want it to be melodic and have layers of harmony and melody, but also fit that together with these big heavy bass lines and things like that, you know, it's definitely going to pay to go back and listen to the progression of the music from. What's a good album to start with Tomita, would you say?
The Bermuda Triangle.
Okay.
It's an electronic voyage up to, into, through and out of the Bermuda Triangle. That's the best way I can explain it. It's done musically using pieces of classical music, but fully re-orchestrated on giant Moog systems and Roland systems.
I'm actually putting it on right now.
There you go. It's an astounding album. There's even like encoded messages inside that you have to have it's a Tarbell computer system. You can download the tone and it will read out a message for you. There's all kinds of crazy things installed.
That kind of thing is so techno.
He recorded
so
it
right?
in pyramid sound as well. It's quadraphonics, but with a fifth one above as well. Obviously, nobody had a setup like that.
I would love to get my hands on that multi-track tape and set it up for myself.
Listen to this fade here now.
Oh. You knew what that was going to do already. You know this
I know
album.
every second of it. Now listen.
All right.
The tone is coming up in a minute. Listen.
What's like a modem?
You can download that, and there's an encoded message in it.
Fantastic.
And then you go back into the triangle. You're starting to venture into the triangle now.
Got it.
And you go.
What
down
a concept! Have you ever? I mean, you've done a lot of albums. I'm sure you've had some idea of concept for an album and how it all fits together. Is there any particular album of yours that that has sort of a deeper concept involved?
No, I don't go that deep into it. It's normally a collection of tracks that I write in one block, really. So, like Crush, for example, last year, that was how I was feeling at that point in time.
Got it.
It doesn't really go deeper than that. There's no sort of conceptual things behind it, really.
And I think I kind of feel the same way about making music. I haven't really, gravitated towards coming up with grand concepts. The music that I make is really, and I'm nowhere near as prolific as you. My gosh, I can't imagine. But it's so okay.
Listen.
All right. Crazy.
It's so nice.
This is very distracting. I'm going to have to turn this off, or else we're just going to turn this into a Bermuda Triangle listening session. But as what was I saying about making music based on how I feel? It's definitely always reflective of emotion and where I am in the moment. So I understand that part of it. This album is amazing. I have to
Listen,
turn it.
It's all right.
Okay, all right.
No, it's fine. Move on.
That was a good place to stop. He gave us a little bit of tension, and then, all right, Tomita gave me an out to pause. Fantastic. Thanks for pointing that out, because honestly, this is a Tomita album I have not listened to, so I'm really glad for that. Thanks very much. Lie Society here in the chat says Tomita is one of the pioneers. His version of The Planets is so good. That's one that I know.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And let's see. Max Wild, yes, our leader here at 343 Labs, wants to know if you can talk about why you chose Bitwig over other DAWs. That is definitely in the plan today. We're about halfway through now. Before we get to that, just acknowledging the chat again. Thanks for all the great questions today, for all the regulars who are back. And
thanks, chat.
This has been really great. I hope you're enjoying our sort of impromptu exploration with Tomita and seeing where the conversation goes. This is one of the things I love about it. Like, rather than having a preset, I'm going to ask you these questions and that's all we're going to talk about. Just having a natural flow here makes it much more fun for me. Yeah. And just a reminder, if you haven't already entered the contest, scroll back up. The link is here in the chat somewhere. And do it real soon, because I think we're gonna announce the winner right around quarter of the hour. And just also a reminder, if you're interested in what we're doing at 343 Labs, We've got all sorts of classes starting up. I've got a synthesis and sound design course starting. I think it's on a Sunday coming up in June. You can check all those start dates and available classes on our website. The link is below. You can also check out what we're doing at our Berlin location, 343labs.de. And also a reminder, if you haven't already joined our community on Discord, please come along. You can, talk to other like-minded producers. You can submit your tracks for feedback. All of the instructors from 343 Labs come on every now and then and check out what you guys are doing. We have beat battles. We have sample challenges. We do occasional special events with students that we live stream, and all of that is accessible through, or a lot of that is accessible through our Discord. So please check us out there. And if you haven't already, please subscribe here. We recently got over 10,000 subscribers. We made that goal. Now I guess we're going to shoot for 20. So whatever, if you haven't, again, please subscribe, do the notifications, give us a reaction, all of the stuff I'm supposed to do as a guy on YouTube. Please do. I'm asking you to please help us out a little bit there. And so we're halfway through. Now we want to talk a little bit about what you're doing with the Novation circuit. You sent me a video. When we were setting up here, trying to figure out how are we going to do this with demonstrating gear and only having one camera. And we figured the easiest way to go about it would be to make a video of Carl going through some of his sketches that he's been doing with circuit.
I'll just give you a little bit of background on the Novation. I write a lot of my music in the car. I have a studio, but I got into a situation where I was doing the school run every day. And to get a good parking spot, I had to go really early. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And I always used to take my laptop with me. And I'd have 45 minutes, an hour, no internet, no interruptions. And I would write maybe 4 or 5 different sketches in the car on the laptop. Then I got hold of the Novation circuit, which is battery powered. And it's a really funky little portable unit. So I made an effort to move away from the laptop and try to create a load of sketches on the Novation circuit. So I've ended up with 30 or so different sketches. And these have been developed into the wave of tracks I'm on at the moment.
Simple Sam says, not while driving, I hope.
Oh, no. It's funny because it's in summer, it's super hot here. So I have to put protection over the windows. So the car looks really blacked out, and people just hear all this electro thumping out the car with I don't know whether they think I'm a drug dealer or something like that.
If I heard that, I'd come over and knock on the window and say, hey.
But I'm there every day with the windows blacked out and all this electro pumping out.
That's amazing. I want to have a video of that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's check out this clip. And
so this is me just skipping through the patterns. I'm not doing a performance here. This is me just showing you the different sketches that I've got saved in here. So I'm just flicking through them, and we'll develop one of them later on. You'll see how I've developed it into a full track.
Already, right away, just on that first loop, hearing how polished and how good it sounds straight out of the circuit is amazing.
Well, I set about programming all the synth sounds myself. So there's 64 different synth sounds that I've made. And I loaded in a bunch of samples that I use regularly from Machine and things like that. So it's kind of my own condensed little electro pack, I guess.
Yeah, I was asking you about that, as far as synthesis and sound design, what you do and what you don't do. And you actually mentioned at some point that you like using presets.
I love using presets. I'm really into the idea of almost like found sound, you stumble across things unexpectedly, which leads you into all different new directions that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. I come from the full hands-on, full analog system where I had to program all my sounds. So I've done my time with that in the past, where using machines that didn't have the ability to save presets. So I've been there and I have done all of that. But I do really enjoy the presets and flicking through them and finding really interesting things sonically that fit into unusual spaces in the mix.
Sure. So you're listening to presets with the producer's ear and an artistic ear.
Well, I've always got the keyboard in front of me, so I'll find a preset that I like the sound of. then I'll make a melody or a bass line that comes from that sound, whatever that inspires me to do. So it's a mixture of the two things, really. I will tweak them as well, you know. Sometimes I won't, they'll just be the preset, but it will be my melodies and whatever I do with it. Other times I'll freestyle it and play with the sound and take it in a different direction.
Got it. Some comments and questions here. Arturo de la Cruz says, and it's a little sad, damn, I suck at using my circuit. And I'm sorry, Arturo, you just need to, you know, take your time, practice, you'll get better. But maybe you have some tips for people who have a circuit who are getting started, you know, some things that you like about it that they could try.
One of the interesting things about it is there's no labeling on the knobs. You just don't know what each preset does. There's no ADSR, there's no filter. So
I find that daunting, to be honest. I'm very there's a certain element of visual that I need. I prefer hardware that's like one-to-one rather than menu diving, for example.
Yeah, but it does lend itself to happy accidents, you know.
Right.
I mean, the circuit's great because you can record all the knob twiddling into the patterns. So yeah, experiment. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. It's just all about having fun with it and learning things and developing your thing, you know.
Are you using? There's some software control for the circuit, right?
Yeah.
I assume that makes it easier to do synthesis and sound design.
It does, yeah. I tried different routes. There's a Max for Live plugin you can use. There's all sorts of different ways of getting at the synthesis engine inside. The engine is really big. I think it's a supernova. There's two supernovas inside, or the Nova engine.
Right, I was going to say it corresponds to
6-voice polyphonic machines inside.
That's fantastic.
It's a big synth.
I can't think of something else that small and that inexpensive that has. There's very little out there that is comparable to this, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm more than happy with the results I've got out of this little box. It's a great little unit. I think it sounds nice as well. It sounds fat. I was worried it'd sound a bit plasticky and in the box type sort of software synthesis type thing, but it does have a kind of really nice analog feel to it.
No, I mean, Novation's one of the early really excellent hardware virtual analog manufacturers. Like, I mean, them and I would say Nord. But even then, like, I always felt like Novation synths sound sort of warmer and richer in an analog way than the Nord synths sound a little more edgy. Yeah. But I would agree there. They have a really great sound. Let's see. CokeTube asks if you've performed with the circuit.
No.
Okay, so all in the studio, just generating patterns. Yeah,
I do take Novation gear out when I play live. I have the Novation Launch Pad, the Launch Pad Pro. I have the Launch Control XL, which is all the knobs and sliders. So I have those two with my laptop. And I also take out the Korg Nano Control 2.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Let's see what else have we got in here. Dave Robson is asking. He sees that you have a model samples next to the circuit. How does that fit in to your workflow?
Well,
or is it a model cycles? I don't know.
It's the samples. Yeah.
Got it.
I wanted to have a portable version of Machine.
Got it.
So this was a good solution for me. Again, a super affordable little machine. It only has 1 gigabyte of storage space inside, but it's amazing what you can fit into that. So I took thousands of samples from Machine. You have to make them mono. You have to make them 44.1 is it? And I have some software where I can do batch editing of audio waveforms.
Sure.
So I made sure they were all keeping to a reasonable length, and I ended up managing to fit like 8,500 samples in from Machine into this thing. And again, it's something I could sit in the car with. You can run it off a USB adapter into a battery pack. So again, it's something I can sit and play with. Not just in the studio.
The taking advantage of your commute and waiting for your kids to be done with school. That's great. I identify that as, I mean, I don't have the same situation where I'm not driving anywhere. I actually go pick up my son from his, he's not in person in school now, but he has a pod. He meets a couple other kids a few times a week. I just pick him up on my bicycle. I don't think I can plug in a circuit or a model samples.
Well, for me, it's nice because it's
maybe I should with the bike. That would be funny.
It's a super focused time for me. I know I've got this gap in the day, and I'll spend 10 minutes creating a new piece, and then I'll move on, and then I'll spend 10, 15 minutes making another one, and then I'll move on. So at the end of a few weeks, I have many, many pieces that I can then develop into full-blown tracks.
That's excellent. That's great productivity. And just for anyone, the idea of having a simple piece of gear that you can do a lot with remotely wherever you are. And even you could do this with a laptop, of course, but there's so much other distraction and complexity with a computer. If it's just the circuit or just the model samples, or even like something like a Digitact or a Digitone that's a little more complex, like it's still small and portable. You could do it wherever and then come back, plug it into your DAW, and extract those ideas and then flesh them out, which is kind of where we are now. I've got you on your screen share.
Okay.
And we should start to talk about, what Max asked about, which was how, why you've gotten into Bitwig and your workflow with Bitwig, how you gave it. We just saw this example of you going through these sketches and, beats that you've made with Circuit. And, now we're kind of at the point where how are you getting that material into your DAW, and what about Bitwig, is helpful for that? And also maybe a little bit not about, your reasons for moving from Ableton Live into Bitwig.
Well, let's start with the reasons first, because that's kind of chronological, really.
Yeah.
Like I said, everything had been in the box until I moved down here to the south of France. I have a studio room, so I started buying equipment and building up a hybrid setup. Now, I've been using a Mac Mini server as my studio computer, and the more I started to get into hardware and trying to integrate it into Ableton, the more I was scratching my head and running up against MIDI jitter, things just not falling where I was expecting them to on the audio grid consistently. I've been so used to the ultra precision of plugins. I mean, there's no jitter at all with plugins. Everything is where you'd expect, laser sharp.
Mm-hmm.
But the audio was drifting. There was just there was a problem somewhere. So lots of different solutions. I tried a box from ERM. I tried the box from the USAMO by Expert Sleepers. That one worked, actually. The Expert Sleepers one, I had great success with that with Ableton. It did the job of getting the audio landing exactly on the grid.
Tell everybody how that works. That's actually it's different than you'd expect.
Yeah, it's a plugin that runs inside your DAW, but it sends out an audio pulse. The audio pulse goes out and then back in again. Mm-hmm. Is that right, John? So it knows it's got a sample accurate clock that Ableton or whatever DAW would lock to. So there's no drift. That's your MIDI baseline. That's your MIDI clock, as tight as it could be to a sample.
Well, the resolution of like high, sample rate and high bit rate audio is much finer and more precise than the resolution of your standard MIDI.
So the Expert Sleepers USAMO was working, but there was some. It was a bit tricky to operate. There would be things like, as it was running as a plugin, if you soloed anything in Ableton, the plugin would lose its synchronization.
That's irritating. I would go crazy because I solo things all the time while I'm working.
Exactly. So I needed a new solution, and the more I read into it, the more I saw people talking about Bitwig. Bitwig being excellent with MIDI jitter and timing with the external gate. Downloaded the demo, fully functional demo. You just can't save in it. Had exactly the same setup, plugged it, put in a lot of MIDI sequences that have been used in Ableton, and it was just bang on, absolutely bang on the timing, with no Expert Sleepers, no ERM clocks, nothing. The timing out the box with Bitwig on my Mac was exactly what I needed.
I'm guessing there must be, you know, Bitwig has a different audio engine compared to Live, and the way they've structured it, I'm sure like the MIDI timing and the audio timing must be just sort of more efficient across different CPUs or something like that.
I guess
I can only guess.
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of it at all, but for me, that was just a fantastic solution. So I jumped ship after 17 years of being on Ableton, knowing that I had all this hardware and wanting to integrate it and seeing the headache that I was going to have with it. Bitwig just seemed like a perfect solution.
Sure.
Plus, I had all these new ideas built up in the circuit that I really needed to work into finished tracks. So the two things kind of went hand in hand, really.
Right.
I should say at the same time, I decided to move on to the new Mac Mini with the M1 processor inside. So new DAW, totally new computer with this new wonderful processor inside.
Oh, the M1, right?
The M1, it's extraordinary.
Right.
Now, I will say, almost immediately, I rerun Ableton to see how that worked on this new setup, and it was fine. All the MIDI jitter had gone. So,
and that's even in emulation. That's not native M1 yet.
I don't know whether it's with Big
amazing.
Sur. I don't know whether it's the new operating system Big Sur does some things differently under the hood, or whether it's down to the M1 processor just being phenomenally powerful,
right,
and giving USB the legroom it needs to remain stable. Because all my gear's connected via USB. I don't have like a big MIDI hub. All this gear is on USB, and it's all rock solid now.
And USB can be problematic when you have a lot of devices. So let's start to get into a little bit more of how you work with Bitwig. And we have another question here from CokeTube. How do you take your ideas out from the circuit into the DAW?
Let's do that now then.
Great.
So you can see you've got my Bitwig up on your screen, right?
That's
Everybody can see that. Okay. So it's very similar to Ableton. I mean, it was written by some of the people from Ableton. So going across the top, we have scenes. Ableton traditionally went from top to bottom. So we're going across here in scenes. It's traditional in the sense that you set up audio tracks or MIDI tracks. Down here, I have an external folder, and these are all my things coming in from the outside world. So I have my RD8 coming in here, my 101, the Moog, the TD3 Matrix, all my external gear. The circuit is down here at the bottom. So I guess let's put the circuit on. If I press play there. Okay, so
we just heard that in the video. That's great.
Yeah, so that's the track that we're going to look at now. So let me play that again. Okay, so circuit is coming in here on an audio track, and I basically literally separate out the different elements that circuit is playing. So if we go to this track up on the top here, this is the kick from that track. Then the next one down.
So you're soloing each thing and tracking it separately and recording however long of the phrase that you need.
Exactly. I normally record for 8 bars. So there's the hats. Now, here's the other part. That's the kind of bass sound that comes in. And the other part from the circuit is this synth. So that'll come in now. So those are the elements from circuit there.
Right. So if you were performing this track live using the circuit, you could mute and unmute these elements in real time, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. There's a mixer button on the circuit. You press that, and you've literally got a button above each of the elements to drop them in or drop them out. The sequence is really nice on the circuit. You can chain together like 8 different sequences per instrument and drop them in, drop them out. It's a really fun little sequencer. So yeah, that's the main sketch from circuit there. I think we can hear circuit coming in.
Oh yeah, you don't want to double them.
Yeah, let me turn that off there. Okay, so I can still hear it. Let me turn the machine down itself. Right, there we go. So that's how I'd get circuit in. I'd record each elements into its own clip. I guess we should talk about the other external gear as well. We'll have a look at that. Here is the RD8, for example. So if I unmute that and press play. Do you want me to turn the camera here?
Oh, if you can, it'd be great to see a little bit of your hardware.
Okay.
I'm sure everyone would like to get a peek into your
yeah. Let me see what you're seeing. If I turn this there. What about that?
That's fantastic.
Okay there? Okay. Right, let me just hide that.
So you've got, it looks like there's another Novation synth. Is that an Arturia back there on the left?
Let me see. Let me just bring up that. Yeah, we've got a mini Bruce over on the back here.
All right.
Tangled up on my wires. Let me put on Bitwig so I can
A world of wires, Carl.
Yeah.
Unwinds before you.
Unwinds around me. Okay, so back onto Bitwig here. I'm just going to bring in some sequences that will play these various machines here. So this is the baseline sequence that was playing on the circuit. This is now playing the SH. Or
that's actually the Behringer version, right?
This is the Behringer. I got one of the early ones that still says 101 before they had to change it for legal reasons.
Got it. I'm very tempted to get one of those. I mean, I have a boutique SH01, the Roland version. It's so tiny. It sounds great, but I accidentally broke a switch already going to a gig, and it's just so fiddly. The knobs are so close. The faders are so close together with my big middle-aged man hands here. I need bigger gear.
It's one of my favorite synths of all time, the 101, and I'm really super happy to have this, be it clone or original. I'm happy with that.
Sounds legit. How does it sound? How's the LFO sound at a high rate? Does it do like audio rate?
Oh sure, yeah, you can go crazy. Let's do a bit of that now. Oh, I think my chair arm just pressed stop. Right, let's go again. Right.
Your chair's not having it.
Yeah. Okay, let's do some LFO. I'll do it on the pitch. Right, I'm gonna go. There's a low rate. Okay, now we're gonna start going up. And there's a medium rate.
So it's got a switchable rate on the front there?
Yeah.
Fantastic. See, there's an example of like a menu dive that I have to do on the boutique version to get to switch into audio rate LFO. This one just has a switch on the front. That's perfect.
We're going really fast now. I'll turn up the octave so you can hear it a bit better. It goes into audio rate. It's very, very fast, the LFO.
I wanted to point that out because audio rate modulation is a big, important part, well, of synthesis in general, but when you're making these kind of specific electro sounds that have that metallic, ringy, kind of dirty edge to it, that's what it is usually. It's usually audio rate modulation of like a bright waveform, like a square or a saw. Or it's on the filter. Like if you do the same thing on do filter FM, it sounds like a whole nother thing. It makes the synth much more detailed and complex than just that simple waveform.
Well, that's what they did with this. They've included FM modulation on this machine, which takes it into some weird areas as well that the original 101 didn't do.
Right. Yeah, people would mod the original to do this. As Jason points out, he had his SH101 modded so you could do audio rate.
Yeah. It takes it from that. It goes into some...
Now you're doing the filter, right?
No, this is the FM amount.
But FM of the filter?
It's
or the
FM
pitch?
Of the filter, yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's under the filter section there. Right, so that's the 101. Okay.
Fantastic.
Right, let's bring in something else. We've got the neutron, so it's going to be the same part. Now you're not going to see the neutron; it's over on this other side here. But
okay. That's another Behringer, right?
That's right.
The neutron is a little bit like one of those new Moog synths, isn't it? I want to say it's like a Mother or one of those ones that's patchable, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a semi-modular thing with a big patch bay over on the right-hand side, so you can get into all the patch cabling and sending things all over the place. It's a really, really nice machine. Highly recommend this to anyone getting into synthesis.
I've been thinking about it.
It's a great little unit. Right, so that's the Neutron there.
Sounds like they're a little out of sync.
Really?
Just slightly.
I have got a weird delay on the Neutron. Let me turn the delay off.
Yeah, it was the delay.
Yeah. It has a built-in, really like crunchy, crusty delay. You know, you can do all that type of thing with it.
I like the kind of dirty old school delay circuit.
Yeah.
It's a little bit crunchy.
So the RD8, so we've got this one. I'll just briefly show you some of the new functions on the pattern sequencer. So the sequencer can be going along, but I've got some fills over here that I've programmed. So I can change them anytime. Normally your fill will come at the end of 4 or 8 bars, but with this new function on here, I can drop into this part whenever I want to in the sequence, so you can just have a little bit of the fill.
All right. Oh, I see. That's great for a quick variation or in live performance. You can just have a loop going and automatically go back.
That's
perfect.
Drop out or drop in.
And that's one button. I can handle one button.
Yeah. You've got the note repeat as well here, so select your whatever sound you want to repeat, and then you've got 4 different speeds for the repeat. So you've got that's on 16ths, 32s, right. 64ths, 128s.
Yeah, that's another nice one. Now, I'm sure when you're making a track, I mean, this is all good live performance stuff, but also you're probably doing this kind of stuff in real time and recording yourself. You're tracking yourself doing all these changes and then going back and editing that.
Yeah, if I wanted to do recording the RD8, yeah, I'd set it rolling and I'd record 64 bars of me messing about with this.
Got it.
I've got the TD3 over here. My screen has gone off. Why can't I see the screen? Is that affecting the screen share?
No, you're still on our side. No worries.
I can't see the screen. Right, I'm going to bring in the TD3.
I think that Neutron might be doubled. I think we might be hearing it twice.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll turn the
Neutron
down.
There,
the Neutron's out.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there was a little bit of a echo on there that was...
Okay.
But now we can hear the 303 or the new version of the 303. That's another Behringer, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's Behringer TD3.
Cool. So, I just want to pause for a moment and congratulate our winner of the $200 Ableton certificate, Kai Struckel. We'll be emailing you the details on how to collect your prize very shortly. So yeah, congratulations there. And yeah, we're almost at 2, but I if you're okay, we can go just a little bit longer. I want to talk a little bit more because I thank you for showing us all the sort of your hardware stuff. We've gone outside of just what you're doing with the circuit, and this also turned into a little bit of a Behringer show, because we're hearing like, all right, these sound really good and are totally legit for making this kind of music.
Yeah, I've got no complaints with them.
Someone asked about your Moog. Which model of Moog is that? That's right there above the MS 101?
Right. This is what I received when I was 13 years old. It's called a ConcertMate MG1. It was made by Tandy.
Which is in the United States Radio Shack.
Realistic. It was
Realistic Radio Shack, yeah.
So that thing there, let's just have a quick listen to it. If I get that running there. So that's running from the, I've got the Korg SQ1 here.
Right. The SQ1 that's another good, like, inexpensive, very useful thing.
Like $100. Really fun little sequencer. You can go forward on it, backwards on it, all over the place. The sequence is really, really nice.
And it's perfect for something like that Moog, which has gate or has CV and gate inputs and no internal sequencer.
Oh, there you go. There's the Moog. It's well, you say Moog, don't you, in the States?
Moog.
Moog. Lovely little machine.
Great.
About that.
Nice. So before we go.
Yeah.
So you were showing me some interesting stuff about using Bitwig, and the what you really liked about, and maybe if you could move your camera back so we can see you.
Yeah, sure.
You were showing me some stuff the other day about how you could customize your MIDI mapping for your external controller into software or anything really.
Yeah,
and how that works in Bitwig, and how that really was the first time you found a DAW that did it exactly how you needed it to work.
Exactly. I tried many times in Ableton. I know Ableton can do it. You can map things to controllers. But I found the implementation in Bitwig to be fantastic. It coincided with CPU sent me. He had a bunch of these controllers made. He had like 10 controllers.
And to be clear, we're talking about CPU records, the
CPU
label.
records. Yeah. He had these prototype MIDI controllers made, and he sent me one over so I could integrate it into my studio. So it's got 16 knobs, and there's a switch on the left hand side, which when you switch it down, it gives you 17 to 32. So there's 32 controls on it in total.
Just so everybody knows, I've actually brought up a picture that Carl sent me of what he's talking about, since he doesn't have a camera on it right now, but you can see it's this rack mount with a bunch of knobs on the front. And you see the central processing unit logo there on the left. This is some pretty legit Electro gear here. Like, you're lucky to have it.
It doesn't get more Electro than this controller, I don't think. So, okay, so let's take this, for example. We've got this Juno plugin here. Now, the implementation with Bitwig is like this. You can open your plugin window there, but you have this little button down on the bottom. This brings up a new window where you can basically assign blocks of 8 controllers to whatever you want on this machine here. So these are like the macros you'd have on Ableton.
Sure. Is there an unlimited number?
Yeah, I think so. I've never needed to go beyond this anyway, because this corresponds to the 16 by 16 I've got on the CPU controller.
Right.
Now, if I click this window down here, and if I turn the first knob on the CPU controller, so I've already mapped this. So I've mapped knob number 1, I've mapped the second one, and so on and so on. So I've mapped all 16 of bank A, and 16, which is when I flick the switch. And all of these, well, not all of them, but the ones I want to be connected to this machine go up to here. So the filter, for example, I'm going to turn this one here, controller number 74, and when I do that, you can see it's controlling the frequency on the Juno. So I've done that for resonance, I've done that for ADSR, I've done that for all the controls I want. Now, what's really nice with Bitwig, and what I fell in love with, was I can just save this for that machine. So whenever I call that up in the future now, I know that all those controls are going to be mapped directly for that machine.
Actually, we had a question exactly about that. Arturo asked, do you have to remember which synth patch are you using, or for each project, or is there some way to save the preset through MIDI? So I think it's not exactly what you're talking about, but it's related, like how the mapping is saved and set for particular instruments.
The mapping is set for that plugin. So whatever project I'm in, if I call up this Juno, all that mapping will be there. But what's really nice, I've got those 32 controls there for the Juno. If I just flick now to the Diva, I've got the same. I've done the same for 32 different things on Diva, ADSR, filter. So it's not just using those controls for one plugin. I can now flick back to the Juno, and again, the filter works, the resonance works, the ADSR works.
So it's automatically switching. So the control, you don't have to like change a MIDI channel or highlight a particular device. It stays connected to that particular plugin no matter which.
Exactly. Those are all the controls that I've already pre-mapped onto the Diva, and I've saved it linked to that plugin. So anytime I call up the Diva, all of those things that I've specified for the Diva are directly linked onto the CPU controller or any controller.
Sure.
Let's quickly go into how that's done, because this is kind of berserk.
We are now deep into the serious
I just want to
weeds
show you
of,
this quickly, because this just blew my mind. Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll go into controllers. Now, there's a person, he's called Driven by Moth, and he makes custom controllers for different DAWs, but I think he specializes in Bitwig. So he's done this thing called Driven by Moth, which you drop in as a script for Bitwig. Now, it's called a generic flexi, and now this I've set one up for my little Korg Nano control down here. This tiny little Korg, $40 little controller. But what it's allowed me to do is just map an incredible amount of things from the Diva user experience onto this tiny little controller. So the Nano control has got 8 knobs, 8 faders, and what's that, 24 buttons, plus all the play, repeat, loop, etc., etc. But you can map them to anything. Let's see if I go into what's one of the things I can show you where there's a crazy amount of things going on. Here.
What?
Okay.
That looks...
any knob, any button on this little Korg Nano controller, I can assign from the entire Bitwig
you have to
experience.
Know already what you want to like.
Well,
this
they're in
is
blocks.
daunting.
They're in blocks.
Okay.
There's panel management. There's clip launch aspects. There's
I could see this
navigation.
being a little daunting for a beginner.
Oh, for a beginner, absolutely. But I've been doing this, all my life, so this is the right thing at the right time for me. I've just been absolutely thrilled.
No, there's nothing like that view that you just said. Like, I love Ableton Live. I'm pretty committed to it. It's my workflow, and how I do everything is live. The workflow is great. And Bitwig is very intriguing to me. There's nothing like that I'm aware of. Now, there must be some kind of specific stuff you can do with, the Max for Live and kind of custom stuff that you could probably build something.
Can you flick to the webcam? Can you flick to the webcam?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, I'm going to hold this up. I don't know whether you're going to be able to see this. Let's have a look. Okay. Is that in focus?
Roughly. It's a little blurry, but we can see it.
Okay. Now, I've gone really super geeky on this. I got a blank template.
As if we weren't already.
Yeah.
It's
no,
another
I'm
level.
going uber geeky here. So I got a blank template, and I made a little thing on the computer with all the controls that I want to control in Bitwig. This is just paper stuck on.
Oh, you've made your own overlay.
I've printed this piece, my own overlay with all the controls that I've just mapped in Bitwig that I was showing you there. So this little $40 thing has just given me ultimate control of the DAW. It's just given it a whole new lease of life. So I'm really enjoying having a dedicated controller for the DAW.
That's excellent.
Yeah. So that was one of many things in Bitwig. Right. The timing, being able to map all the controllers like that super easily. I showed you earlier, this was are you back on the screen share now?
Yeah.
So you can see this was all the scenes going across that way. In Bitwig, you have an arrange page as well, so you can position that how you want. So you can take entire scenes, drag them from there, and drop them over onto here. But let me show you this one really super cool thing. So I've got this synth here. Let me solo it and play it. Okay, so this is a Prophet 5 from Arturia.
Right.
Now, that's a MIDI part, yeah? Now, if I do Alt and drag onto the timeline, onto the arrange page, watch what it does. It renders it to audio as I Alt drag it on the same channel as MIDI. I've got MIDI and audio on the same line.
That's great.
It's really good. So I can have the real part.
That is definitely not an Ableton Live thing.
I can have the real part playing MIDI there. And then when it gets to here, it's playing the same thing, but it's audio. So then, you've got whatever you want to do to that.
Now, here's a question I wonder about. When you play back the audio, does it deactivate the MIDI device, the instrument? I'm just wondering if this is a way of saving on CPU usage.
Let's do it. I'm going to play from there. So it's going to play you're gonna see it play the real-time notes, and then it's gonna go into audio. So let's see. I don't know. I've not done
Like,
this.
does it cut?
Let's see. Hard to tell anyway.
I mean, it has a fade to it, but
let me move it over. We'll see.
All right.
Super geeky. Yeah, it cuts out.
But that actually, in a way, that might be good if it's economizing on how much the CPU is working. If you've got a lot of tracks going on.
Yeah.
And then, the live workflow is to freeze the track.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing is frozen. It's not running MIDI at all. And generally what I'll do is I might duplicate it and then freeze it and then have the MIDI with the instrument turned off so it's not taking up the CPU cycles. Yeah. And then when I need to use it, you can automate it on just for that one part. But this is just streamlining a workflow like that and making it much more simple.
Bitwig it doesn't use audio units. It will only use VSTs. So you can use VST3s, which don't use any CPU when it's not playing any MIDI parts.
That's great.
CPU, they just turn off, basically. CPU is no longer an issue with this M1 Mac. It's just insane how many real-time instruments I can have going at the same time.
Have you had any issues with certain plugins not being happy with the M1?
The only fatality has been Waves. Waves is just not working at the moment. So there is a way to do it, but
and they'll be updating eventually, I'm sure.
But one of the other things, listen to this, all the plugins inside Bitwig are contained in a sandbox, their own individual sandbox.
Right, so your plugin won't crash your DAW if it goes wrong.
Any plug that goes down, it doesn't take the app with it as well. So
yeah, that was a big selling point in the very beginning with Bitwig. Yeah. They talked about that before the first version was released.
Yeah, man.
This has been great. We've covered so much stuff. I've learned a lot about Bitwig today, which is amazing. And I have tried it, but I'm going to try it again.
I'm super happy. Like I said, the jitter thing disappeared now that I've got a really powerful computer. So it could have been down to my older computer struggling. I mean, it was a quad-core i7, so it was no slouch, But anyway, on the M1, Ableton and Bitwig are both jitter-free as far as I can tell.
I want to play one more track before we go. Okay, wrapping up Bitwig, that was excellent. It was really nice to get a little window into your studio and what you're doing with hardware. And then we had a little unexpected Behringer feature there, which I'm totally cool with. I've got the RD8 and I want a Neutron for sure. And probably the 101 clone as well, because that's I've said this before, it's a desert island synth. Like if I had to be isolated with few tools, I would want a 101, especially for making electro and techno. They're just incredible for that. And so rewarding and easy to play with. But all right, so speaking of last things, I want to play this track that I talked about with Keith Tenniswood when he was on it, and this is one of his favorites of yours and mine. And there was a particular kind of thing going on with the sound. Let's get that playing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just a classic for me. Like, I have the vinyl. When is this released? Was this a 90s or early 2000s?
This is 98, I think.
Right.
97, 98, but it's I think it was the first Voice Stealer EP after the album.
Voice Stealer is one of your pseudonyms along with Silicon Scally.
I only did one album as Voice Stealer, one album and a couple of EPs, I think, but no more after that. So yeah, there's a thing going on here. Can I put up a picture of the studio desk? Let's see.
Yeah, if you put that up and we go to the screen share, we should be able to see it.
There you go.
Look at that. That's the old studio.
This is back in the 90s. This is where I did everything.
Nice.
So we have a real analog desk. Well, I mean, everything is. It's all real boxes. Look at the Mac on the right-hand side there. This is like free plugins and stuff.
Which Mac was that?
That is an LC2.
Okay.
I've been on Mac since about 94, I think.
I had a Mac SE.
Yeah.
And I was using Performer and Vision, pre-Studio Vision, just regular opcode Vision on that. It was amazing, actually.
Nice.
Talk about perfect MIDI timing. Back then, no problem.
Yeah.
So
exactly, because the computers had nothing else to do. I mean, the operating systems were so light and there was just no stress on them. They've got so many millions of things to do now that it's it puts a lot of stress on lowly things like USB MIDI, you know.
Right.
So
getting back to this track, there's something about there's an effect in this track which just, you know, Keith was talking about, and like I wanted to ask you how you did it, but
well, it's a feedback loop between the kick, the 808 kick, and the 808 snare. I can't remember which way around it was, but one of them is feeding into the other. One of the channels is on a feedback loop, and the feedback is only broken when I think it's when the kick drum comes in. So I think it's the snare that's feeding back, and the feedback drops away every time the kick comes in. So when the kick isn't there, you hear this sound, feedback sound around the snare. Listen.
And okay, the feedback is being delayed, right? There's got to be a effect to get that sound.
The kick is so heavy that it's crushing the feedback. The feedback can't happen because the kick is just taking up all the space. I think that's how I did it.
And it's doing some. It sounds like it's ducking or gating, but it's something not. Like you're not using an external effect to do that. I think it just had to do with the balance of the signal. Anyway, it sounds amazing. The energy of this track is killer, and it's just like drums and a couple of synths and you saying something, and it's massive. This one, it's one of my favorites for sure.
It's just 808, 101 doing that fizzy lead thing, and I think there's a Roland Super JX in there as well.
There's a little blippy melody on top that kind of with an echo.
Yeah, I think that acidy kind of bass line is the Moog MG1.
With the same one sitting in there?
Yeah.
Of course. Nice. So much fun today, Carl. Thanks again for being here. This has been
my pleasure, John. Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Really excellent. And of course, just getting to know you a little bit, talking before doing the show.
Yeah.
It's been really excellent. Definitely going to stay in touch. Thanks for the music.
My
thanks
pleasure.
for sharing about the Tomita album. That was amazing.
Yeah, get into Tomita. There's just the whole crazy world of Tomita. It's just mind-blowing Tomita. Can't recommend him enough.
I have one last question from the chat from Simple Sam. Hey, is Carl an amateur astronomer?
You saw the telescope at the back there,
It's
right?
very prominent.
Yeah. I do like to look deep into the universe and wonder what it's all about.
That's great. That's so perfect. And I think, you know, we hear it in your music too. So everybody, thanks for coming along with the ride and hanging out with me and with Carl. This was a really good time. I'll be back next week. I've got Sirta. Are you familiar with that artist?
Me? I don't know anyone.
Oh, you don't know anyone? Well, definitely
I don't listen to music.
You said that. I shouldn't have asked, but all right. I'm going to send you some of the music so you can know. And anyway, come back and watch next time. You're going to do some pretty crazy stuff with his workflow and using randomness and chance and some sound design ideas. So this should be another good one for everybody. And again, thanks to everyone in the chat. We're coming back on Tuesday. Tetro has another call-in show this week. So, if you guys have questions about music production or whatever, you can call in and he'll answer you. So that's it for this week. We'll see you next time. Adios.